Hi, good morning from a very cold New Zealand. We had 0 degrees this morning, which is very unusual, and I don't like it. So I'll try and warm up as I speak this morning. Um, the title, Walking the Tightrope. Um, I've been thinking a lot about the position of knowing within SF, and I looked back on the notes of some of what myself and other colleagues spoke about. And I think the concept of expertise or expert is a little misunderstood in solution focus, and I'll try and explain, but I'll also bring in other elements to this. So we're told often in therapy training we have to bring our authentic self to therapy. That means that we don't always ask questions in exactly the same way as another practitioner. That means some people spend a lot of time on best hopes question, some people use a miracle question or other preferred future questions. For instance, some people spend a lot more time eliciting detail than others. I happen to be one of those people. People spend a lot more time looking at instances of things happening. So, to some degree, we have to accept within our practice, we do lead some things. We lead based on following the client. We lead based on the person we're seeing's best hopes. We lead on asking the questions that are useful based on where the person we're seeing has said they want to be going, what they want to be different. Um, okay, we're not experts on the client's life, on the all the times this person that sat in front of us or people that sat in front of us have succeeded, have got through, have done things throughout their life that mean they're uniquely placed to understand about themselves better than we are. We do have a level of expertise, and that expertise is shared in the room. We know when to shut up, we know when to ask questions, we know to stick to the questions that are useful based on um, previous practitioners' ways of working, based on the solution focused model, based on the fact that we're trying always to stick with that person in front of us, their agenda, what they would like to be different. Now, that takes some doing. It takes some doing because there's a discipline to it. And that discipline itself, that practice discipline, if you like, um, is in itself requires a level of expertise. It's very easy when somebody says, "I don't know," or when somebody says, "Can you give me advice?" or when somebody says, "I'm not sure what you mean," when somebody says, "I've run out of ideas," or something like that. It's very easy to step in and support them. It's very easy because we are working in a helping profession. We're used to doing those things, and we're used to when we seek help ourselves, people giving us that help. The discipline, the expertise that's required to stick with the questions based on the last answer in solution focused work, the expertise that's required to not allow yourself to be um, taken on a tangent, to not allow your own inner thoughts, your own inner helper, your own inner expert to provide answers. Um, that discipline requires some practice. It requires, Scott Miller talks about deliberate practice. Other people have other versions of this, but it requires a level of dedication. Um, when we and my colleagues were looking at writing a book we were talking about before, we talked very much about where are the edges of solution focus? When does solution focus not become solution focus? When do we stray over into other models, or when do we lose our focus part of the solution focus? For me, it's when we start to take the expertise from a person we're seeing, when we start to imply, allude to, insert or otherwise assert our thoughts and our processes and our ideas of what might be useful. Okay. So somebody comes to me and says, "I'm depressed, and I don't want to be depressed anymore." So they start with a negative goal. I don't want to be something. My role as a solution focused worker is to say, and what would you like to be different, and or where would you like to be? What would you like to be instead? From that point, we're moving forwards. From that point, we're moving to somewhere somebody wants to go. If a response is a non-committal response, a negative response, a response that is a lack of understanding, my job is to ask the question again, maybe in a different way, maybe in the same way, maybe chunk it down, but to nevertheless remember the central tenet, which is this person in front of me wants something to be different. It's no good for me to say, well, when people are depressed, this is what's happening in their brain, and you can do these things, and exercise is a great helper for depression, and you need to keep yourself active and motivated. Those are all my assertions of what I think will work and what I've read will work with other people. I have no idea what's going to work for this person until they tell me. Okay. I have no right in a solution focused model to assert that something is going to be useful for them. It's my job to ascertain what is useful for them. The difference between assertion and ascertaining. The difference between insertion and invitation. They're where I see some of the edges of solution focus. I think if you step over that tightrope, inevitably you fall. And if you step off a tightrope, you fall into an abyss, depending on the area the tightrope's anchored over. But I think once you start falling off that tightrope, I think it's very easy to keep falling. And part of being solution focused is that we tread that tightrope very, very carefully, and we treat the person we're seeing with the utmost care, respect, and concern, but we don't step off the tightrope. How we do that is, as I said, a matter of practice. I believe you can learn solution focused techniques and questions very, very easily. I believe that you can spend a day training, or that you can read one book and you get it. You get the idea of what solution focus is about. It's not that difficult. But to stay with the person you're seeing, to not allow yourself to become detracted by your own hubris of what you think is useful, that's the difficult part. And that takes time, that takes dedication, it takes practice, it takes discipline. And above all else, it takes noticing. Noticing and paying attention to what the person you've spoken to or are speaking to says, and the next thing you're going to ask. Because the next thing you're going to ask is always going to be based on the last answer they've given. The last answer they've given will be based on the last question you asked, which all starts from either best hopes or miracle question or another way of determining what they would like to be different. And here's the crux of it. People get stuck. Therapists, solution focused practitioners get stuck. And they get stuck often because they don't start with this focus. If you don't start with this focus, you can't keep the focus. It's very hard to bring it back. And that's important. Start with a focus, keep the focus. Don't insert your own ideas, although you still have to be your authentic self. You still have to be you. But try not to be anything other than the caring, solution focused worker, but actually sticks to the script. The script is important. A last word on this, and maybe a bit controversial. I talked early on in one of my videos about adaptation, refinement, evolution, development in solution focus. And when we bring our authentic selves to the therapy room or the other room in solution focus, we inevitably bring a level of creativity. I'm not particularly creative. Some people are much more creative, and we bring things that we find are useful for the person that we're seeing. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with people determining different questions that are all based on the solution focused principles. Where it gets difficult for me is when I see somebody develop something called solution focused, but actually probably isn't solution focused. It's for the benefit of the practitioner more than it's for the benefit of the people we're seeing. And when it's for the benefit of a practitioner, sometimes in terms of financial benefit, sometimes in terms of ego, sometimes in terms of fame or space in the solution focused crowd, then it becomes problematic. I would argue at that point it stops being solution focused. There are very, very many people that have developed ideas in solution focus that are directly related to what is helpful, what is useful for the people they're seeing. No problem with that. Happy to see that happening. And in fact, my own practice is developed by watching what other people have done and the innovations other people have talked about. However, the cautionary word is this helpful for the person you're seeing? If it's not, if it's for some other reason, then I don't think it's very solution focused. Don't want to end the video on negative, so just going back to where I said before, practice, practice, and practice. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave comments as usual. See you next week. Bye.